Hello, friend. Welcome to Discoverage 14.5, where it all gets trippy.
It does get a little difficult for us to get our heads around. This is going to be a fun one to synopsise.
Yeah.
But anyway, we've got a bit of...
Last time on Star Trek The Next Generation.
Yeah, I know. It's been a while. But on Tumblr this week, I discover, thanks to somebody putting a post up, that we finally know why Jonathan Frakes sits so bizarrely and generally holds himself so awkwardly as Riker. It's not a character thing at all. Poor chap did his back in removing furniture. I don't know if it was a part of a job or he was moving house or whatever. And so he gave himself a permanent back injury, and that's why he looks a trifle odd.
Okay.
So that's one of life's great mysteries solved, anyway.
Right.
Thank you, Tumblr.
Yeah. Does it explain why he has to put his foot on everything?
Again, that might be for comfort for his back, you see.
Okay.
It's like some people lean up against walls all the time because that's the only comfortable position they can be in.
Okay.
I'm thinking of a former church warden.
Yeah. Okay.
He thought she was holding the building up. Nope. Anyways, we also have some...
Previously on Star Trek Discovery.
As you perhaps might more expect.
Yes.
We've heard from Becky.
Hello. And she writes, "Hi, Orcs. I just thought I'd drop a line about a couple of points from the last Discovery podcast. Sorry I never get feedback in on time for the episode.
No worries.
That's okay. Discussion of the Universal Translator always reminds me that you should never think too hard about the Universal Translator, because if you do, it immediately breaks it.
Yes.
It makes no actual sense within continuity and is a purely narrative device."
Yes, you can tell the moment, and I was listening back to last week's podcast yesterday, and you can just tell the moment when my brain goes, ping, it's broke.
Which is why it's always a step onto thin ice when the show itself draws too much attention to it.
That's the problem, isn't it? It's like, yeah, this wouldn't... Normally we'd just take it for granted, but because you're making a thing of it,
yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah. She says, but it worked pretty effectively here in the scene of everyone talking in different languages because it had a great sense of panic and chaos.
Yes.
And I was getting quite freaked out watching it. So while I don't think they should talk about the Universal Translator too much, it was a good reminder that there's a piece of technology they rely on as completely as they do the warp engine and the life support. And we never give it a first thought, never mind a second.
Yeah, it's very good for drama. And yes, you're right, that's a very dramatic moment when they're all talking in different languages and not understanding each other. But you just don't think about it, which actually might be a good motto for tonight's Discovery episode as well.
Possibly, yes. And she goes on to talk about music. And she says, after last week's use of Space Oddity and the other times contemporary music has been used on the show, it got me thinking about the whole subject. My conclusion, the way I get it to make sense in my head, is that unless the music is actually named and talked about within the scene, I don't take it literally. What I mean is that the music we, the audience, are hearing is not the same music as the characters are hearing. Music is there for the audience to evoke particular emotions or convey some information, even if the characters are also hearing music, such as in that party scene in last year's Discovery.
Yeah, it works for that, yes, fair enough.
Or even music they are singing. So to make us have the appropriate emotional reaction, they have to use music we will know.
Yeah, and there's nothing worse than trying to do sci-fi music, because that always sounds wank, doesn't it?
It does.
Battlestar Galactica, are you listening?
Yes, Rogers.
Yeah, it's even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point, yeah.
Like, is the music played at the party something the cool kids listen to, or something cheesy you'd hear at a wedding? If it was some music written for the show that was meant to be contemporary to them, we won't be able to tell the difference. They could have had Tilly sing some song they wrote for the show, but it wouldn't have hit the audience like Space Oddity does.
Exactly.
So I think of that song as being symbolic. She's actually singing some song from her era that means the same to people then as Space Oddity means to us now.
I think Space Odyssey will remain a classic in hundreds of years' time, personally. I don't think that remix of the Bee Gees will, but Space Odyssey, definitely. Yeah. It's still, I mean, what was that, 70s, 60s?
Yeah.
And it's still a thing now. I can't help feeling it'll still be a thing in the future. And, in the same way as we've got classical music that was written hundreds of years ago, we still hold dear today.
Yeah, there's tunes that people still know. They might not have words to them, because that wasn't so much of a thing. But there's, like, Greensleeves. Is an example. I think it was written in Tudor times. But if you start singing it, other people join in, don't they?
Yeah, great art will last.
Yeah.
Space Oddity is great art.
Yeah. But I think you're right about the Bee Gees disco thing. I'm not sure you could call that great art.
No, it was the Bee Gees the Bee Gees original might just be around, but the remix, that's so awful. No. Anyway, she's right. For that one, it's just mood music, isn't it? So fair enough.
Yeah. And she says, Okay, maybe I'll try and get in some feedback in time for the next one. And meanwhile, there's Battlestar Galactica to feedback on too. I've already watched The Gun on Ice Planet Zero, and I'll watch the next episode and get some thoughts typed up. Thank you!
Thanks, Vicky. Look forward to hearing it.
Yeah. And yes, I definitely agree with things like the disco and stuff. It's setting a mood.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, it does. Like that idea. Thank you.
Okay, we've heard from Purry on last week's episode, which was an O-Bowl for Chiron. I suppose at least the episode title stuck in my head just because it was so silly, but there we go.
An oblong for Sharon, yes.
Yes.
Hi guys, Purry here to talk about the Discovery episode Sharon's Oboe? Oboe for Sharon? Wanky title, as you guys all said. And yeah, I am recording after the podcast. Again, I've not disliked any episodes here. I quite enjoyed it. This was actually very Trek. I really saw this as a plot that you could run in any Trek series. Seriously, take the basic central plot of big red thing appears in front of the ship, screws up the computer. They think it's an attack, but it turns out to be trying to talk to the very basic plot. That could work in TOS, could work in TNG. You could see Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise. You could see any of the crews dealing with this, and that's what made it good. It was it felt very Trek, and that's always worthwhile. It was nice to see everyone having something to do, and including I can't remember his name, but Lizard Guy, liked him, and the way they did sort of play up the Universal Translator. I could go into how I think the Universal Translator works. And one of the things you did say in the cast that no one's been seen with anything in their ears, not strictly true. In Little Green Men, Quark, Nog and Rom have something in their ear, but I took that as a 24th century thing. I think the only time we've seen Universal Translators working in Discovery is in the Tilly short, where it is with the communicator, but it's kind of one of those things where, to be honest, I think us not seeing everyone looking like they're talking in a 1970s kung fu film is purely a filming aesthetic. I don't think it re-edits how your brain sees lips moving, although it actually technically could. What you see is a composite of things as interpreted by your optical cortex. So if they had the advanced technology, they could technically make that happen, but that would involve some form of brain implant. But it's doable. In a sci-fi setting at any rate. I don't think that's how it's meant to work, but there you go. But enough about the Universal Translator, the episode. So yeah, overall I enjoyed it. The two main strands really were what was going on with the ship, with Saru obviously dying alongside the ship, and that sort of trigger of him, and the Tilly, Stamets, and Jet Reno, who I'm glad is back, and I really liked her playing off with Stamets in the room. And yeah, I got the force of nature vibe from it as well, but I thought particularly because Stamets was being so smug about how much better mycelium is to dilithium, I thought, yeah, that's going to come to a fall. I reckoned, to be honest, I know it sounds bad saying it now, I reckon we were coming to something like there's things living in the mycelium network who don't like someone driving a starship through it. Reckon we were coming to that. That was my personal, sadly in my own head, so I could be making this up, theory on how we don't see spore drives in the later 23rd, 24th century when they'd been really handy, is because they were hurting someone. But yeah, overall, like I say, I think we're still seeing things being set up to move on with the Tilly plot this time. I do hope we sort it out. I hope it doesn't drag on too long, but I'll be interested to see if the sort of fungus thing has turned itself into a portal, or if Tilly's been brought into the mycelial network. As for the Saru plot, I thought, it's brilliant. It's one of these things that's kind of in two minds. It was all brilliantly acted. There were some real kind of tearing up moments. Brilliant performances all around. Like I say, the scene where everyone stands up on the bridge, the kind of real feeling that that Michael's family is people like Saru and probably some of the other crew was really good, but it did feel like a cop-out. If you want my tinfoil hat theory, the Ba'u or Ba'au or whatever they are, the people who harvest Kelpians, what if they're Kelpians who have lost their threat ganglia? And what if we're going to have kind of a plot on this that in fact it's not quite he'll turn into evil Saru, but basically they sort of lift up the ones who they think are going to transform and turn them into their race, and so they're not actually eating them or anything. It's basically they lift them off planet to go and live among the stars, which could be interesting. But I hope we'll see some follow-up on this, because I think it will tie in nicely to Brightest Star. So yeah, as always, enjoyed the episode though, so yeah, still good stuff. So as always, do keep up the good work. I do always look forward to the next podcast, and I'll hopefully feedback on the next one, although probably, as always, late. So until that time, bye for now.
Bye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, the universal translators are subcutaneous, aren't they, in Deep Space Nine?
Yeah.
Because that well, at least for Ferengi, anyway.
Yeah.
Well, kind of makes sense considering the size of their ears. Yeah, that's true, but it's all sort of coming through the computer for
And
Discovery.
the
Unless
communicator,
yeah, unless they've got and they can do it remotely via the communicator.
Yeah.
I like Stamets' smugness about I haven't picked up on that, but that's very true. Him singing the praises of the Spore Drive was setting himself up for a fall.
It was a bit. Yeah. Good guess in terms of tonight's episode about Tilly.
Yeah.
And in terms of the I kind of like the idea that the Bao'u, whatever they are actually saving the Kelpians. That would be interesting.
Maybe. I
don't quite know how they'd get it to work.
Yeah.
But it could be that they're taking them away from the... But then why would nobody have come across Kelpians before? Because Saru does not look massively different just because he has no ganglia. So if they're in the stars, would they not have been found by now?
Yeah, I think, unfortunately, we're going to find out they're all Gaul by the time they catch up with them, sadly, in order to make everything fit. But there we are. We shall see. Interesting theory.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because they could do an Odo thing, couldn't they? Where he's the only one of his species, except he isn't, and they're the baddies.
Yeah, but they've got to go somewhere afterwards then, haven't they, to not be in the series anymore?
Well, I don't know. There's all sorts of things they could potentially do. We'll just have to wait and see. At the moment, all we're doing is guessing.
We are,
yes. But thank you, Porry!
There you go. Let's move on to Saints of Imperfection.
Bring us to the bridge.
We found Tilly.
How soon can you get back?
There's been a complication.
We won't survive complications, Commander.
I know, but something resembling Dr. Culber is here.
Beat that, Commander.
Dr. Culber, remember? Before you came aboard,
I know who he was. I need you to make it make sense.
I can't. Commander Stamets went running.
Commander Burnham. Michael.
Yeah, because that title makes sense.
Again, no, and I tried to find out what it was a reference to, and all I could find is a quote from Guillermo del Toro, the director,
Right.
Yep, who talked about, he's very fond of monsters, and he talked about them being the patron saints of our blissful imperfection. And considering he works a lot with Doug Jones,
Yeah.
I wonder if that's where they got it from. I don't know. But again, how it relates to the episode, I do not know. I think it's just a cool thing. They thought, that sounds cool, we'll call our episode this. Which makes it then very hard to remember which title goes with which episode.
Well, in terms of why they did it, you think about the plot, there isn't actually a monster in the end.
No.
It's all projection. And that might be what Guillermo del Toro is saying about monsters. They aren't really monsters. We project upon them.
So in which case you've got to know that that's a quote from Guillermo del Toro, which, let's face it, he's not the most well-known poet or a writer.
No.
Weird. Anyway.
I think they just like being cryptic with their titles.
Unfortunately, I think you're right.
And it pisses me off.
Anyways, sadly the Netflix preview image, as soon as you click on Discovery, shows you a picture of Giorgio, so you know she's in it, which is a bit of a shame, really. Partly because it means it's not a surprise when she comes walking down the shop.
Whereas I didn't see the preview image.
Yeah, well done.
And I love that twist.
Netflix. But also, I was kind of, not her again. We've only had her a couple of episodes ago. I'm not really sure I was up for more Giorgio. But anyway, as it turns out, the part she had to play was interesting, so it didn't matter. Yeah, Burnham is tearing down the corridors to Starboard Engineering, as we know it is now called, from Andy. Thank you for that, Andy. More of that later. Where Tilly has disappeared into the Mayblob, which we find out later is a cocoon. Get some little flashback scenes out there. It's still sharing a room, apparently, which, considering Burnham is quite a relatively senior officer, seems a bit odd, really, but there we are.
Unless she liked the idea.
Yeah,
they have forged a close friendship.
Yeah, perhaps you can choose to share your room still, yeah. But obviously before they were sharing, because they were both right at the bottom of the rungs of the ladders, so therefore it made sense from a rank perspective. But,
but I can still see that she might say, get off of the choice. She'll be like, no, Tilly's had my back, and actually, I appreciate our friendship.
Yeah.
I can see that.
She talks about, quite theological this episode, it has to be said, with ruminations on faith and resurrection. She says she wants to have faith, but only has duty.
Duty?
Oh dear. Never mind. That American pronunciation has been completely ruined for me by, what was it called, that cartoon? Wreck-It Ralph. That's where that's from. We see Spock's shuttle heading towards a red nebula thing, because of course it's red, because it's season 2 and everything has to be red. A nice bit of cat and mouse, although perhaps not as well visualised as it ought to have been, but never mind. Discovery fires a torpedo, and we get a torpedo's eye view as well as it shoots out, which again is a bit showy for my liking. See also the turbo lift scene a couple of episodes ago, but anyway. It explodes just in front of the shuttle, which knocks it out, really wobbly, and then they tractor it aboard. But it's not Spock, because every episode's a Spock tease at the moment. Yeah. Oh, we're going to get Spock? No. It's something else. And this something else is Giorgio. Okay.
See, I like that twist, because I didn't know it was coming, but I like the idea that Section 31 are going to be looking for Spock, because I just think they would.
That's trouble, isn't it? Yeah.
And I like the idea that if effectively it's a decoy, that they've got the shuttle and then Discovery going after them, and then so the Discovery therefore haven't got to Spock before they have, kind of thing. I think I like that idea. I liked the twist.
Oh, so that she was a decoy to make sure that they didn't get to Spock first.
Yeah.
I hadn't clocked that, because I was wondering what the hell Giorgio was doing out here in Spock's shuttle, but okay.
That's the way I read it, anyway.
Okay. Anyway, she evades Pike's questions, because he was at college with the original Giorgio, and who obviously he assumes she is. And he says that she reminds him of his cousin who only gave a straight answer in church. There we are. So, yes, apparently practicing Christians still. Yeah. Excellent. She shows off her Section 31 badge, which everyone recognises. Clearly not the same Section 31 that's talked about in Deep Space Nine, this, is it? But never mind.
Yeah, but they could...
They basically talk about it as Starfleet intelligence, in the same way as we talk about the Tal Shiar or the Obsidian Order, which is definitely not the way Deep Space Nine approached it and invented it, let's face it.
But then also, you don't get any mention in Next Gen, so I'm just wondering if it's going to be that there's some kind of really hideous scandal, possibly caused by Georgiou because she is the Emperor. And so what happens is Section 31 is officially shut down, and we are not going to behave that, and we're not going to...
No, but that doesn't work, because then they'd have to, in order for Julian, poor old Julian, to be as in the dark about Section 31 as it is, because, I mean, the first thing he's going to do is space Google Section 31, isn't he? They'll have had to remove every record of its existence.
But maybe they do.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is something they may well be addressing at some point.
I just think there is enough time between this and even Next Gen, let alone DS9 that's a little bit later, that they could, if it was a horrible scandal that blows up and they shut it down, they could do it that way, that they remove all evidence, they don't want anything to do with it, and that's what makes them always go around saying, no, we're above that, we don't do that. And actually, they did, past tense, and never stopped.
Yeah, but as far as most people are concerned, it stopped. That might work. And again, it's something the series may well address, because they do seem to be tying up some of the curiosities and loose ends that don't make any sense in future Trek. Pike talks to Leyland, who's it says he's in Starfleet intelligence, which appears to be synonymous with 31 at this point. Pike claims that the red signals are a threat to life, but again, I can't remember them ever telling us why they are. I mean, that would explain the urgency about it all, but why are they a threat to life? What's going on? Michael and Giorgio square off on the way back to the shuttle, and it's a nice moment of tension as the commander tells the Emperor to keep her hands off her brother. Michael calls her a snake, and she hisses back.
I love that.
Which took me to a Captain Beaky place.
Captain what?
There is not enough time to explain Captain Beaky. I will put the song in and Google Captain Beaky. Okay, that's all I can say. It was a thing back when I was a kid.
Okay.
Once hissing Sid, an evil snake, kept the wooden folk awake in fear and trembling every night in case he gave someone a bite. Said Artful Owl, we'll lie in wait, and one of us will be the bait. Said Captain Beaky, have no fear.
Stamets has worked out Tilly's in the network, where she's been pulled into by May, basically. The blue of the network has now got splodges of red, because this is Season 2, and we're moving on from blue. Blue's passé. Everything has to be red. Apparently she needs Tilly to kill a monster, which is interesting. So. What's that coming over the hill? Is it a monster? Is it a monster? What's that coming over the Okay, fair enough. Section 31's liaison has arrived, and it's Ash Ketchum in a black uniform like Giorgio's that doesn't at all scream Gestapo. Although he hasn't got her high heels, I suppose. But yes, that's just so Gestapo, and the whole way they behave is like the Gestapo as well, in terms of they're not part of the normal rank structure. There are always tensions between them and the Nazi military.
I interpreted it much more literally. Possibly I wasn't supposed to. Black for black ops.
Right, okay. Yeah, but there's no point wandering around the ship wearing black, because actually it makes you stand out even more on bright ships like this, so it's not camouflage, if that's what you mean. Pike has figured out Giorgio isn't the same woman he knew at the academy, so he's not just a pretty face. And you feel for him as he pleads for Michael to be open to him, and she's like, I really can't. It's complicated. Ask me later.
Yeah.
Narn is revealed to be the new chief of security, or at least I hadn't noticed that being mentioned before, but it is here. And you notice she's wearing the scamped version of the uniform as well, which is quite nice.
Yeah, I like that.
Everyone stares at Ash when he walks on the bridge, especially Stamets, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
They plan to do a partial jump, ending up in the network partly, giving them an hour before the ship is eaten. Nice bit of tension.
Mr. Stamets, are you ready to execute this very bold, deeply insane plan of yours?
Execute might not have been my choice of words, but that I am, sir.
Black alert. Let's jump.
And if you thought Discovery wasn't a great design before, the half-jumped ship splatted between the universes looks very daft.
It's like it's trying to do Titanic in space. It looks like water and a ship that's sinking, but with
stuck in an iceberg. And,
but with like nebula around it and shit. It's just fucking weird.
I mean, in terms of how the effects are done, it's really nice, and it's amazing visuals. It's just also really daft as well.
Yeah.
This is like Star Trek when they've been smoking too many spores, basically.
Yeah. Was this written by some of the people who worked on the animated series? People who did BEM.
Yeah, possibly. Anyway, they do the jump, and they arrive right where Tilly and May are, which I thought the mycelial network was supposed to be huge, so how do they know where to land? It doesn't, they literally turn up right in front of them. How did they know that's where they needed to be? It's a bit...
Could they not follow Tilly's trajectory?
I don't know, maybe.
I don't know, but that's what I was wondering.
I mean, it's the least of the puzzling things about this story, as we said. Much to May's confusion, Tilly gives a pinky promise not to abandon her, which is so Tilly.
Yeah.
It's lovely. They find some of the monster, which is the black stuff we've seen before when the Discovery made jumps, like back in Context is for Kings. So that's another little mystery solved. I need you to make it make sense, Pike says. That's kind of the theme for the episode for me, because good luck with that. Tilly grabs a phaser rifle, and they find Michael and Stamets. May explains the monster is something they can't break down, and it turns out to be Hugh, or at least Hugh's soul, which somehow has form. What's going on here? Because it ain't that in his body, because his body was left behind, and it was dead. Yeah. So this is his soul, which has taken... have the spores given it form, but then they say they can't break it down. Oh, is he a ghost? I mean, what the hell?
I don't know. I mean, when Hugh aside, when they talk about breaking something down and using it or whatever, or
that makes
reappearing,
sense,
that I can understand. The closest thing I can get to understand what they're trying to say has happened to Hugh is stuff to do with the transporter, which they then, in Next Gen, abandoned as swiftly as they could because they realised it was a complete fuck-up. Which is the idea that you can have a transporter... Because when you're transported, it's kind of not you. You're broken down and reassembled. And you can therefore...
You're dying, effectively.
You can therefore produce another you if it all gets fucked up, which they do with Pulaski. And then they realised that there was problems with that. Yeah. I think that's what they're trying to tell you has happened here.
There is a closer parallel in Trek to what's going on here, of course. And I made the comment when we were watching it, and that's Spock and his Catra. Because, I mean, all that is a pile of Huey, isn't it? Because... basically, apparently you can bottle Vulcan souls and store them in people's brains, and then when their body's been miraculously restored by a life-giving torpedo into its original shape somehow, then you can put the genie back in the bottle, and to put the soul back in the body, and all is well, and they carry on. I mean, it's not like Trek hasn't been here before, so we can't criticise Discovery for this. This is a Trek thing, but, oh man, does it make no sense?
No.
The Discovery starts to get eaten up, So they've got to get out. So Ash calls for help from Section 31, which has been disguising... Their stealth ship's been disguising itself as a moon, which is interesting. So it's not like a cloak. It's actually a holographic disguise, which I quite like. It's different, isn't it? But the way that Ash does it, he taps his comp badge.
Yeah.
Tippy-tap. The first tippy-tap. And Pike's like, where'd you get that? It's like, you're going to have to wait a long time before you get one of those, Pikey. Sorry. The stealth ship seemingly fires torpedo-like looking thing. You think, what are they doing? They're going to blow up Discovery. But no, they turn out to be little things that attach themselves to Discovery's hull, which they then sort of have tractor beams which they can pull it out, which is interesting. There's a lot of tension here between Pike and Ash, because Ash is sort of partly giving orders and stuff, and Pike's like, no, I'm in charge here, matey, get back.
Yeah.
Again, it's that whole Gestapo regular army tension going on. Stamets catches up with Culber, and they refers back to when he was having visions after they jumped to the Mirror Universe in Season 1. And apparently he transferred the soul of Hugh to the network with a kiss. Which is very romantic, but really? Really, Star Trek? Again, we've been here before, so you can't criticise Discovery for this, but wow. When Stamets tries to pull Hugh back to the normal universe, it becomes apparent he can't go back because his body isn't there. He's a ghost.
Well, yeah, because his body was presumably cremated or something.
That's not his body, yeah.
No, yeah.
But don't worry, we have a solution. Good luck working this one out. Hand wavium to maximum speed, because it's apparently they can use the cocoon that transported Tilly and gave her a body, do it somehow backwards-ish. Anyway, yeah. Help? Diagrams, please?
Again, I think this is kind of like a transporter.
What we needed was a scene, and it would have been in character for Pike to have gone, hang on a minute, I need you to explain this with PowerPoints to me.
Yes. Draw me a picture.
Yes. Yeah, because they do the old analogy thing. It's like he was transferred originally like a lightning rod, Tilly says. Like, that explains anything. But they're doing that.
That just makes me think of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Are they creating Frankenstein's monster?
I don't know. But anyway, the bottom line is they can get Culber to emerge from the cocoon all naked, but all okay. Yay, they brought him back from the dead.
So it's kind of like a transporter, but without clothes.
Our daughter's like, this is ridiculous. They should never have killed him in the first place. It's like, yep,
yes!
Well done, from the lips of a 13-year-old. Because they realised they'd done fucked up, and now they've had to do this ridiculous plot MacGuffin to get him back.
Yeah.
Never mind. Pike beams aboard the stealth ship, and we get the return of Admiral Cornwell, which is nice.
Hello, Admiral Greggs.
Apparently the red signals, I think that's what they're talking about at this point, leave behind tachyon signals, which may indicate time travel ahead. We haven't done that yet, so that was probably on the list of things we must do. Mirror Universe tick. Time travel, okay, that's coming up. Or it could be the presence of cloaking devices or transporters. Okay. As long as it doesn't turn out to be those dudes from Enterprise that were messing with the timeline.
Oh.
We could do without that. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be mining Enterprise at any point, but yeah. The Admiral orders Pike and Leyland to get on, as they're both on the same team, and there's all stuff about... She said she kind of makes out it's testosterone, but you don't really get that from Pike, to be honest. He's just pissed off because, quite rightly, he's supposed to be in charge, and here's this guy who's, just because of his black uniform, can try and order him around.
See, I'm not seeing this so much as a Gestapo thing, just because they're wearing black. I'm seeing it more like in the US, when like the FBI or someone come in and take over from the other... That's more how I'm seeing it.
Right. I think it's the black uniforms doesn't make it feel far more... I mean, they're all right, they haven't got skulls on their uniforms, but they may as well, to be brutally honest. Anyway, there's a great moment when Pike realises he's stuck with Tyler.
As we're working together, I assume my temporary liaison officer is permanent.
For the time being, Agent Tyler is yours.
Unless you prefer Captain Giorgio. No, thank you.
Nope.
Yeah. And that's obviously setting up some nice tension for future episodes as well. But obviously the Admiralty have some command over Section 31 at this point, because Cornwall's able to order Leyland around. So, all very interesting. Giorgio hollow messages Burnham, claims to want to find Spock before someone more trigger-happy than her does. Do we believe her? Strokey chin, strokey chin. And Michael goes to give Tilly a hug to comfort her over the loss of May, which is really sweet.
Yeah, I like that.
Thanks.
In terms of Giorgio, my reading of her is that it's not that necessarily she lies. what she does is misleads Mr. X and doesn't tell the whole truth. So she could very well be telling the truth when she says she isn't trigger happy, she doesn't want to shoot him. She probably wants to interrogate him and possibly do all sorts of weird shit with his brain, but she doesn't want to just shoot him. Do you see what I mean?
Well, maybe. I mean, she's completely loose cannon, and obviously Section 31 don't quite realise what they've got on their hands at the moment.
No,
anyway.
they don't.
But Michael does.
Yeah. So, I mean, Michael not trusting her, that's right. But I just think she may well be telling the truth when she says she doesn't want to shoot Spock. It's just that she doesn't want nice things for him either.
Yep. So we get a very weird story, it has to be said.
Weird.
It's not unentertaining, but it's up there with Star Trek 3 on levels of what the actual?
Yeah, I don't think it's really a story about the mushrooms. I think the people who wrote this were on them.
But we have, Trek saying there is such a thing as a soul, which is nice. I can buy into that. You've got Michael monologuing at the beginning and the end about issues around faith and wanting to be able to have faith. We have a resurrection, for heaven's sake. This is interesting stuff, and Christianity's just being talked about all over the place now, like it's still a thing. Wow. Makes me happy. The Section 31 stuff is odd as well, but only because we're used to them being far more in the shadows than they are at this
and I just think
there's
some. I can just see with the stuff with the wrong Georgiou, as it were, building up to something that's so catastrophic.
Yeah,
it goes.
They all get.
I think so. I really like the Tilly stuff.
Yeah, now the Tilly stuff is lovely. Tilly and May and. Yeah, and the whole, I finally got a friend, and now I've got to say goodbye to the friend because it's far more important that you have your husband. It's stop it.
Yeah, yes. Oh. But also, I did like the twist. And I like Admiral Greggs telling the two blokes. But also, I love Pike. Now, you're going to have to find this and insert this clip because I can't remember it. But just as they're about to go with Stamets' plan...
Yeah, don't worry, I've already included that.
Yeah, just what he says is just... It had me in stitches.
Yeah,
I loved it.
He's just...
I love Pike.
He's just a wonderful, just completely non-techno-babbly, plain-speaking guy. Yeah,
I like it.
I also, love him at the moment.
The other thing I like as well is the spark between him and Leyland, where Leyland goes, "You've got a bit of grey in your hair."
Yeah,
and he's kind of like, "Well, yeah."
At least I got it.
Yeah, at least I had hair. It's just like, wow.
Look on their faces.
Brilliant.
So yes, this felt like a story that had too much work to do to try and get a character that they should never have killed in the first place back.
Yes.
But besides that plot going on, actually, I really enjoyed it. So it's just a lot of scratching of head and going, okay, I'm not even going to bother to try and work this out.
No.
Silly.
Silly. But then again, if you try and work out Star Trek 3, that...
Exactly. Yeah. It's again. I'm not saying this is something Discovery's doing wrong. It's doing Trek wrong on this because Trek has done this before.
Yeah, and again with bringing Pulaski back via the transporter. Yeah. It's it has been known to do all sorts of peculiar weird shit to bring somebody back. It's got form.
Yes. Let's find out what other people thought.
And we've heard from Doreen, who writes, "So Hugh is back. So I guess that means Stamets is staying too." Well, that's true, because he was going to go to whatever it was, wasn't it? He was going to leave the Discovery.
Yes, originally, because he couldn't cope with being around the place that reminded him of Hugh. So, yep, that means we get to keep Stamets. Yep. Jolly good.
I know Peter and many people don't like the design of Discovery, but I think I might, and I quite like the spinning saucer section. I liked the Section 31 ship, along with its break from camouflage.
Yeah, and the way it does the Transformer business, I like.
Yeah. An effect I did not like was when the Discovery was between the mycelium network and our dimension, and it looked like a galleon wrecked in the sea.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that may even have been what they were going for.
That might have
been
deliberate, but I didn't like it either.
Silly. Very silly.
I found specks of dust in my eyes during Michael's voiceover at the start about names defining people. I don't think her final voiceover about the possibility of a guiding hand would ever have been allowed when Roddenberry was in charge.
No. He's beyond spinning in his grave now. He's whip warp 10.
I enjoyed the main storyline, but I can't think what to say about it. I'm not surprised. It didn't make any fucking sense.
What did I just watch?
Yes.
Thank you, Dory.
Thank you.
And yeah, of course, it's fine for you to love it's taste, isn't it?
Yeah.
Designs of spaceships, and some are going to work for some people. Obviously, whoever decided that was the design they were going for thought that was a lovely design. Hey-ho. Anyway, and it's worked for Doreen, so that's good. We've heard from Andy. Quick bit of feedback. All in all, enjoyed the episode, but felt it could have been a bit better paced, perhaps over 2 episodes. Interesting point. But at the same time, seemed like a bit of a distraction from the overall Where Spock story. Every story's like, I mean, that's happened last week as well. We're going after Spock. Oh, hang on a minute, we've discovered, that every time they think they're catching up with him, something else crops up. I guess it was good to get this done in one. So I know what you're thinking. Why is Section 31 trotting around with their own badges and their own ships when Deep Space Nine they were so super secret and no one had ever heard of them? Well, to steal a phrase, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. We have to assume at some point between now, the Discovery now, not the now, and 2375, so some 118 years, Section 31 went off book. That's kind of what you were saying, wasn't it? And made a deliberate move to be forgotten. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. We know the Romulans have the Tal Shiar, the Cardassians have the Obsidian Order, but these are authoritarian states and use these forces to control their populations in addition to fighting external powers. And like the Gestapo, he's gone to that place as well, the Stasi and the KGB, reputation and fear of the organisations are just as important as the actual intelligence and black ops which are performed. However, in the more utopian Federation, using Section 31 in such a manner would be counterproductive and likely lead to seeing them facing ever-increasing scrutiny and calls for oversight. So instead, it would be better to operate quietly forgotten. So we have to assume at some point, perhaps even as the focus of the upcoming Section 31 series, there will be a move to put Section 31 back in the shadows and out of sight, out of mind, with only the occasional glimpse of them prior to what we see in Deep Space Nine. Yeah, but I say, the only problem with that, it's going to have to be a major rubbing out of everything that's been recorded up to this point, but hey-ho. Or we can chalk it up to another example of Picard's timeline fucks up in First Contact. Here he goes again.
Yeah.
Damn it, Picard.
Yeah.
P.S. Starrett's lab is located in Starboard Engineering, according to the plaque by the door, but it's Discovery's port side that enters the mycelial network. Anyway, I would surmise there will be a port and starboard engineering labs and a main engineering where the warp core is located. Still no sign of the chief engineer mind.
Yeah.
Yes. But that works nicely for me because it is supposed to be a science ship. That was the original point of the design. So lots of labs, and therefore there's sciencey stuff around engineering as well, with a couple of engineering labs either side of the main engineering, which we may get to see at some point, hopefully, along with the chief engineer, hopefully. Hey-ho. But yes, completely agree. Thank you for that, sir.
Thank you. Here's the question.
Yes.
Given that the Enterprise is a new ship, isn't it, or something? Like Discovery's a bit weird, but the Shenzhou was an older ship, wasn't it? Could it be that the idea of a chief engineer and a chief medical officer hasn't quite come in yet?
Interesting thought.
That, in other words, that you're on rotation, and if you're the one who's rotated on at that time, then you are in charge.
Yes, but they don't actually have the post of CMA. I mean, obviously they have chief engineer, because they have referred to the chief engineer of the Enterprise that's obviously prior to Scotty, and saying how much he was in love with the ship, remember?
Yeah.
So chief engineer is the thing, and therefore should be, and it has been referred to on the Discovery as well, it's just we've never seen them. But yes, perhaps the way that medical is organised is different. I mean, we have this thing about having two sick bays. So,
so it could just be that there isn't necessarily a chief.
That's the thing that's just occurred to me, because I'm wondering whether the Enterprise D had two sick bays, one in, I'll have to go to my plans and check, one in the saucer section and one in the engineering section, because obviously if you split up, and you're right if you're engineering because you've got your sick bay there, but was there a smaller sick bay in the saucer section? I don't know. And also that's making me wonder, was Discovery ever designed to saucer step, and how ridiculous that would look, like have a yo-yo going round. Whereas the other bit's just like a paper aeroplane, it would look even uglier separated, wouldn't it? Blimey. Anyways.
Yeah, but the original Enterprise didn't saucer step, did it?
No.
So maybe that was a later thing, surely.
Well, except certainly the ones the refit in the movie is capable of doing it, and there was talk of possibly it happening in the original series, but they obviously would have had to have built new models, which they're never going to do. So instead, they didn't go for it. But yes, whilst it's never referred to in canon as being capable of it, there was talk of it being able to do it. It's just we never saw it in the series because they could never afford it.
Okay.
Right. That brings us on to MP3 feedback.
And we've heard from Martin.
Hello, Martin.
Hello.
Hello there all, it's Martin here. I'm just attempting to give you a bit of feedback for Discovery Season 2. Just watched Saints of Imperfection. And yes, I thought it was a very good episode. I see we got Hugh back in a bit of a Terminator style, which meant he had a shave, I think, at the end there when he was reborn out of his cocoon. In fact, the whole mycelial network thing reminded me a bit of Stranger Things. I think the way they did that. Clem Fandango is now back on the bridge as Section 31 liaison, and it's quite obvious that they're gearing up for the series. There's a lot of hints and things in the background and bits of plot I think they're probably going to bring up to play. Although the fact that Giorgio was in the shuttle wasn't really much of a surprise. So thank you Netflix for that, for putting up a picture of Michelle Yeoh with her hands up as part of the preview picture. So far on Discovery Season 2, I mean, I'm really enjoying this one so far. I think Christopher Pike, I think he's been a brilliant little addition. Again, last season we had Dark and Complicated Lorca, so this season we've got a bit more of the Kirk swagger back. He's a bit more of an adventurer, and I quite like that. I think it's kind of what was needed, again, I think, after Lorca. Although I did like the new old uniforms, the primary colours. I thought they were very well done. I thought they were very well designed. Obviously, I thought we couldn't keep them because he's the captain of the ship. He's got to wear the rest is the same of his crew. It's only natural. I see there also, I think, addressing some fan issues. Well, not perhaps issues, but suggestions from Series 1. Obviously, the bridge crew have got names now. That roll call bit obviously was meant to be a bit of a nod to that. They're now, so everyone kind of knows who they are. And we're getting more Tilly as well. She's more of a central part. I mean, I did wonder in this episode whether we were going to see Mary Wiseman at all, whether she'd stay in the cocoon, a bit like old school Doctor Who when Patrick Troughton or William Hartnell wanted to go on holiday and they get a bash on the head. Sorry about that. I do have some thoughts about where it might lead, and this is a bit of a kooky theory of mine, that the Angel is Burnham, I think. And now that we know that time travel could be involved, which always perks up my interest, I think that could be a possibility. It was just something that the helmet cam in the other episode, I don't know, just the shape of it. I just wondered, is that Burnham? But well, I suppose we'll see that. Actually, speaking of that episode, is there perhaps more Christian imagery in this one, with Giorgio describing herself as a snake and eating the apple as very Garden of Eden? Although they have to watch out for that, it could be a bit problematic. As I remember, the Fantastic Beasts sequel got into trouble a bit for portraying an Asian person as a snake, as Nagini, Voldemort's snake. One thing I did want to say, although I am enjoying the series, I do wonder whether there are at times where it feels that Discovery's being shoehorned into continuity. I think it's felt a bit more with this kind of Spock stuff. Because obviously Spock doesn't mention Michael Burnham. I mean, that's a big problem. I mean, I'm kind of with you that we should have had her with another high-ranking Vulcan family, perhaps a friend of Spock at school. But because it's not in established continuity, you can just kind of, it doesn't feel organic. We can kind of see the plot mechanics rumbling on. Michael's got to have done something to put Spock off so that he doesn't mention her. Again, it just feels like you're doing this just because you've put yourselves in this position. Now you've got to scramble to get yourselves out of it, and that's interesting. It's just a bit off-putting. There, you kind of can see the mechanics of it. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts whether that's kind of where we're heading. Mr. Saru as well. The Kelpians, obviously, we know they never reappear in Trek again. So at some point, that's going to come back, isn't it? We've got to find out why they never appear again, and there's got to be a reason for that. And we know that's because, again, the future is influencing the past. Oh, yes, actually, that was another point. Speaking of future in the past, I mean, if time travel is involved, maybe that's how Discovery ends up 1,000 years in the future in Calypso. With the mycelial network as well, that feels a bit more natural because it's Discovery's thing, so they can kind of do what they like with it. Although, of course, we know that the spore drive doesn't reappear in the future, but it feels like Discovery is very much exploring that and its own thing. As I say, I'm still very much enjoying season 2, so I don't want to sound like I'm moaning about it at all, but it just feels like they're scrambling a bit to kind of to cover those plot holes. Although obviously Spock doesn't seem like the sort of person to go about the bridge and getting out a wallet of his family photos and detail every last member of his family, so that we definitely knew who they were. Then again, who knows? Maybe that's what sent him mad. Suddenly having a sister inserted into your continuity will do that to you. let's face it, you had Cybok as well, so never mind, the poor old chap might be going a bit loopy. And why we was it's another search for Spock as well. I mean, we've looked for that guy more times than Matt Damon. Yeah, hopefully I might be able to feedback another time. But on with the podcast. Thank you very much. And what are you doing with your little fingers? Cheers. Bye.
Thank you, Martins. And you don't want to know what I'm doing with my little finger. I've not seen Stranger Things, so I don't know about this. He's not the first to mention those parallels, but yeah, not sure.
I like the idea of, yes, Pike is the adventurer.
Yes, he is a refreshing change, isn't he? He's good fun.
Yeah.
Lorca was fun in a different way, I suppose, but he wasn't as... It's nice to have somebody bright and breezy in charge of the Discovery.
Yeah, and also I think, although it was interesting watching it with Lorca, it's not like you ever thought, oh, I'd love to be on the Discovery. Whereas with Pike, you think, oh, I'd love to be there.
Yeah, definitely.
I hadn't really picked up, and I probably should have done, the whole Burnham was eating an apple while they were talking about a steak.
Yeah.
I don't know that the angel is Burnham because time travel.
Well, there you go. If that turns out to be true, Martin said it first.
Yeah.
So, time travel does open up lots of possibilities, doesn't it? So
yeah,
that would be quite interesting. Brilliant. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
We've also heard from Andrew.
Roses are red, violets are blue.
Watch where you're going, you dumbass! I'll double dumbass on you!
Just a little thing there I didn't get to say on Valentine's Day. And speaking of love, Culber and Stamets together again.
Basically, it's a love story across time, space, death and reality.
So, of course, Culber didn't actually die. What happened was his energy was transmitted through Stamets into the mycelial realm, where the Jarsep reconstituted his body from material within the mycelial realm, but he kind of went a little mad. And so the Jarsep decided, we need to deal with this. So they try to break his body back down again, but Culber resists, and he gets all the bark from the trees, which is poisonous to the Jarsep, and he covers himself with the bark to protect himself, and he breaks off so much bark from so many trees that he's actually denuding the forest and causing ecological catastrophe, which leads May to go and find Tilly, and that brings us to where we are now, which is the kind of bonkers, high-concept, high-drama I'd expect from Farscape. And I'm okay with that. I like Farscape a lot. I like that kind of bonkers, high-concept, high-drama. More of it, please. Bring it on. And I do hope they don't just put Culber back to work straight away like nothing's happened. I hope they do draw out his reintegration back into the world a bit. I hope they do actually pull out some drama from it. Keep it going for a little while. Which, seeing as Tyler's now back on the ship, seems like something they could do. And speaking of going for a while, the Spock storyline continues without any sign of Spock, but we do get more of Georgiou and Section 31. Now remember, Section 31 are a group who influence the Klingon government. These are people who will influence the Romulan government. These are people who will engineer a weapon to wipe out the Founders. These are people whose professional outlook is basically the entire galaxy and all the threats that are potentially in the galaxy. And they're after Spock, which shows how seriously Starfleet's taking the Red Burst phenomenon. What is it that Spock knows about them and the Red Angel that Section 31 needs to be sent after him? My bet is Episode 7 for when we'll see Spock finally. I don't know anything, I don't have any information, but Episode 7's going to be midway through the season. I can well imagine that's where they would introduce him if they're going to introduce him anywhere. And I'll even go so far as to add a further prediction, which is the end of the season, Discovery will get in trouble, will send a distress signal and have to be rescued by the Enterprise as a mirror image of the start of the season. And actually what they could do is not repair the damage that Discovery sustained from the Jarsep in this episode, so that Discovery is not quite operating at 100%, which would justify perhaps why it might need some help from the Enterprise. On a different note, I did appreciate the attitude of Captain Pike in this episode. I appreciated the consistent attitude, which is that, as he says, Starfleet's a promise. I give my life for you, you give your life for me. Which, of course, he expects Discovery to be able to fulfill to save Tilly, who had absolutely fulfill herself in a heartbeat if she had to. And I liked how it informed his attitude towards Tyler. Tyler, in his eyes, is someone who broke that promise. So he gets very short shrift from Pike. Although if we pay attention during that scene when the mycelial wall advances throughout the bridge, Tyler does grab Lieutenant Reese and pull him away and stops him from getting disintegrated. So he does save a Starfleet officer's life. And Leland, Pike is not happy with Leland because Leland waits until the last minute to fulfill that promise. I liked how they kept that attitude very constant throughout the episode for Captain Pike. And of course that feeds into the menagerie with what Spock does in that episode. Something has to motivate that extreme loyalty that Spock has, and this would seem to be it. Don't think I have much else to say about this episode that's worth saying out loud. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Well, you explained the plot far better than the episode did, to be honest.
Yeah.
But I'm still not completely got my head around how Culber's soul ends up in the mycelial network in the first place. I mean, I know it's something to do with the fact that Stamets was kind of zoning in and out, but it still doesn't... the fact that it seems to be done by a kiss is...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll have to see whether or not we do get Spock in episode 7.
Yeah, do we want to take any of the bets on when he might appear? I don't know. I think that's it. Whenever the mid-season break happens is a fairly good bet, because that'll make for a nice cliffhanger then, won't it?
I think they said they weren't having a mid-season break this time, though.
Oh, right, in which case that won't be happening.
Yeah, you're right. Pike's attitude is consistent. It's a reciprocal relationship between an officer and Starfleet.
Yeah.
And so hence, Starfleet must rescue Tilly, but also that's why he doesn't like Tyler.
Yeah.
And he doesn't like Leyland because of the whole last-minute thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I don't know. Would I be cross with someone who rescued me at the last minute, or would I just be grateful?
I think it's also cross with Leyland because, basically there's a whole power struggle going on between them, and the fact that Leyland is giving him this operative that he didn't necessarily want on board his ship. So there are issues of power struggle going on. Hence, Admiral
Greg's
comment about their egos clashing.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And we've heard from Down Under. Once more from the Middle Earth, we hear from the Llama God.
Llama God's Lark, Scotty, Neujik, Ja, Shejik. Keep it secret. Keep it safe. Unlike, of course, Section 31, who are showing their heads again in this episode, and rather publicly so as well. I can't remember who suggested the idea now, but I do like the idea that maybe they started off like the usual military intelligence and kind of just got a bit more shady as time went on. But I'd be interested to see if any of that is actually addressed in this episode, given just how publicly facing they are. But yes, this was a rather bizarre episode, I thought. And definitely not that satisfying. It seemed that this episode was more of a exercise in bookkeeping than an actual story, basically shuffling people around to get them in the right place for later episodes, as opposed to being, a self-contained story in itself. And with the vain hope that if they end with Michael giving us her usual log voiceover hopeful message thing, that we'd just buy that it was just another episode of Star Trek, and it just really didn't work for me for some reason. And it didn't work for Jo either, because we watch it together, so... And so she was not really seeing what the point of it was either, which is a shame given that the last few episodes have been quite tight, quite well-contained stories. Sure, certain things do happen in this episode, but I didn't really buy a lot of them, and I don't know why, which is strange, because there's a lot of big emotional beats in this episode, which should have landed, but just didn't. I mean, we've got the return of Tyler and his meeting with Michael, and that should have been a lot more emotional than it was, but it just seemed to be like, yeah, okay, we're moving him into place. And likewise, Hugh's return. This should have been big, it should have felt big, but for some reason it just didn't, and I can't quite put my finger on why. It could have been something to do with all the wine I'd drunk last night. Yeah, sorry, New Zealand's got a lot of wine, so maybe that had something to do with it. But yeah, it just didn't seem, he was just kind of there. And it didn't help really that they did the fake-out death thing that they did. I mean, at least it wasn't as long as Saru's one last week, but doing the fake-out death again, 2 episodes in a row, is like, yeah, nah, we know he's coming back some way or the other. Because otherwise this would have been really annoying to have a fake-out returned him as well. So I guess it was the lesser of two evils, but still, it wasn't particularly satisfying. I don't really know why. A couple of other things that bugged me in this episode. I mean, there was a lot of discussions, which included way too many of the usual metaphors, like a lightning conductor, but they had like 8 or 9 of, I don't know, it seemed like that many in a row, and that was just like, yeah, okay, stop that now, please stop that, just explain stuff without the metaphors. And no Spock as well. This is, again, starting to get a little bit tedious. I mean, obviously, he's the MacGuffin, or the Stage 1 MacGuffin before you get to the Red Angels, but not actually finding him this week, you're like, yeah, come on, this search for Spock is going on a little bit too long. This is starting to be not quite as funny. And no Saru, no mention of Saru or what happened with him last week. I mean, I know that clearly they were focusing on other characters this week, but after last week's revelation, I mean, we should really have had something and not just left it, well, completely dangling with no resolution whatsoever. On the plus side, Georgia was great. It's always good to see her, and I loved how she has discovered that she likes operating within Section 31 in sort of that greyer side of Starfleet. Like, yeah, okay, it is rather grey, although then so is the majority of Starfleet, so is that special? I don't know. And, of course, Pike continues to be great, especially, again, how he deals with Section 31 and how he deals with the others, including Admiral Greggs. So it's good to see her back as well. But, yeah, so far this episode was just didn't really ring true with me. I mean, I'm planning on rewatching the last 2 episodes on a big screen as opposed to an iPhone when I finally return from Middle-earth next week. But at the moment, it just felt like a bit of a nothingness. So, so especially with this one, it'll be very interesting to hear what other people think. So, until I get round to doing so, great to you, Borgcast.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I didn't find it unsatisfying, I don't think.
No, and for me,
confusing.
Yeah, confusing. And the return of Colwood didn't have the emotional heft it should have because it seemed so silly.
Yes,
the process. But the Tilly May business actually had far more emotional heft for me.
Yeah.
And capping it with that final scene with Michael, comforting her, that's what really hit me with this episode. And that wasn't the main plot, was it? But
no,
you did miss out, I think, by watching it on a small screen. There are some wonderful visuals in this, weird but wonderful. The whole thing with the Discovery crashing into the mycelial universe is quite weird, but also trippy and a wonder to see. It's going to make for some nice screen grabs. I can't help feeling.
Yeah, in terms of it not feeling enough between Burnham and Tyler, I just wonder whether there's just not enough. A bit like when she says to Pike, "There isn't time now, not now." I kind of got the feeling that was the same thing going on there. That there's just not time for them to deal with it, and so if they do deal with it, that's fine. If they never do, that's a problem. Ditto the stuff with Saru. If it's just that they've lurched from one thing to another, which I think they have in terms of time, haven't they? So it's these events of this episode are immediately after the events of the previous one. Pretty much, because
this is still carrying on them chasing down Spock. So, there's no time to take a breather before the next weird thing happens, basically.
So again, not a problem for me that they don't address Saru this time. Will be a problem if they don't address it at some point soon.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you everybody for feeding back.
Thank you.
We shall catch you for the next episode, which is The Sounds of Thunder.
Okay.
Yeah.
You sure that's not my bum?
Quite possibly. And that will be recording on Saturday, the 23rd of February. Until then, cheerio, bye.
Thanks, bye.
All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
Find our website at borgcast.libsyn.com.
And we have a YouTube channel as well.
You can find the Borgcast playouts on Spotify for your listening pleasure.
Visit our Tumblr site at borgcast.tumblr.com, where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send emails or MP3s to borgcast@gmail.com.
Or you can contact us via Twitter on rev_org or borgcastammo. #Borgcast.
Bye.
Shut it down!
Off, you bugger. Off.